Hey, you want to check out what's happening in alternative porn in France? Let me introduce you to Carré Rose Films. Founded by Carmina, a French-Mexican performer and longtime advocate for sex worker rights. This indie studio is doing things differently, putting performers first, pushing for diversity, and tackling industry issues head on, all of which keep all while keeping things hot and fun. One example, check out this series, 60 Minutes with. Carmina meets a fellow performer for 1 hour. No script, no plan, just sees where the moment takes them, and you get to be right there with them. Don't worry about whether you speak French or not. All films are either in English or subtitled, so you won't miss a thing. Curious? Head to carrierosefilms.com. That's Carrie rosefilms.com. Cams.com is a performer-run webcam studio working with models who want to make serious bank doing online sex work. Top Treasure Cams models are earning 100K plus a year, taking home weekly fat paychecks. We have a great affiliate program to reward you for any traffic you bring to the site. We help you set up with equipment, tech, sales techniques, monthly meetings, and so much more. Visit treasurecams.com to learn more about us and to cam with us. Have you ever been looking for an amazing queer cam performer? Well, I got you covered. You should check out TS Cami. Her super hot content is on Chatterbait, Twitter, Xhamster, and Reddit. Support this rad trans femme. Enter your fantasies. Big Fantasy is a porn star, stripper, femdom, and expert making your fantasies come true. Explore Fig's secret, luxurious world at AQUATAFANA collective.net and at Figs Fantasies on OnlyFans and Figs Fantasy on Instagram. She's waiting for you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Performers Pod. I'm Chelsea Poe, and today my guest is Sam Solo of Girl Bullies. Welcome to the podcast, Sam.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. So
I'm
excited to be here. I don't know, I'm waving. I know it's an audio only medium.
It's okay. I'm sure the energy will be they'll get the vibe of it. I'm so excited to talk to you. I feel like there's so few people who are subs in porn and like have been doing it consistently. I feel like there's probably less than like 12 of us. So I just like find it
I mean,
so interesting.
that could I know a couple of guys that are sort of equivalent to me who have been doing it almost as long, but they're a lot more inconsistent. They come in and out. They might be shooting a little bit. Um, but it is no, definitely way less common.
Yeah, we worked together. I think it's been like maybe 10 years ago now because we're
Oh,
extremely old.
over 10 years.
And like I spanked you and you were being like a tech bro. And I remember that's like when the local Bay Area media was very into picking up porn stories. And we got it picked up by like an SF like weekly newspaper or something. And they're like, even porn is having tech bros parodies in it now.
Remember the headline. The anti-tech backlash has reached porn parody levels. That was the headline for whatever that little because I don't
I
remember the publication, but I remember the headline.
I think it was SF ist or
That is exact.
something.
Yes, the
Yeah.
SFist. I
I don't know if
remember.
that still exists. It might. Not really sure, but I feel like where are you from originally? Are you from the Bay?
I mean, I'm flattered that I give a vibe that I could possibly be from the San Francisco Bay Area. I am from the not so great state of Texas.
Okay.
I am originally a small town Texas boy, but
So,
I left Texas when I was 18. I moved to Brooklyn and lived there for a very, very short period of time. If you are walking out of your home state at the age of 18 with no money, resources, or real world knowledge other than like what you got from being like a sort of semi-homeless little queer teen, you can't actually move to New York. on 9 times out of 10 you're gonna fail. So I did fail in my first attempt to leave Texas. Um, Fortunately, because I ended up on the West Coast, which is where I belong,
Yeah.
and I did
I
eventually
mean,
leave.
I can kind of see you in Brooklyn, like especially like of that era. Like that.
I'm not gonna say how long ago it was. Just say it's a long time ago.
Okay. Um, I feel like there was like definitely a whole like BDSM vibe in Brooklyn, like that hipster Vice kind of era of Brooklyn. So like were you into BDSM and stuff there? Like did you get involved in like the New York BDSM scene at all or not until you
So
got to the West Coast?
I'm gonna be. This is gonna sound a little crazy. When I was 18, I knew like I was already sort of exploring sexuality on like a sort of deeper level. I was reading
Hmm.
a lot of books about like, you know, sex and sexuality. I did not fully understand like the sort of world and subculture of BDSM, yet
Hmm.
I had been in like a power exchange relationship as one of my very first relationships, but it was something that we just sort of stumbled into ourselves. So when I was in New York, I was going to like sex educational theater. Uh,
Okay.
I don't know if anyone listening to this podcast is old enough to know about Nerve magazine. It was like a sex culture magazine from the early internet days before Vice. This is an older than Vice
Okay.
publication. So I know that's maybe a little hard to conceive for some of the listeners, but so I was going to like I remember going to a Nerve event, which was like anal sex education. You got to understand this early 2000s is a very different era. We're literally just teaching people that like anal sex requires preparation. And I remember it was like this theatrical thing where they were pretending to be stewardesses, and like doing the instructions on like basically like basic anal clean out kind of stuff, but like the way you would do the safety video. Um, that is a very long way of saying no, I was not part of the New York BDSM community. I did not even know about, I don't think I probably heard the term munch yet at that point. I was like literally
Mm,
only 18 years old. Um, I did I'm going to tell this story really quick because
no,
it's
go for it.
my
This
New
is
York
what this
sex
whole
story.
podcast is for. This is for all the stories that you can't tell on like the sex work podcast that are like, what's your favorite position and shit like that.
if if anyone is watching this is familiar with the Hollywood director Bryan Singer, who directed X-Men and The Usual Suspects, and he did get in trouble during Me Too for like throwing these sex parties with like teenage boys. One of those teenage boys in New York was me. That's like I was way
I
more of
was
like
that
a
teenage
little
boy.
gay boy than I was like more of like a BDSM bottom. I didn't really
Yeah.
understand like a straight bottom in the same way that I do
Hmm.
now. So he picked me up at an 18 club. And so like I had a cool 40-year-old Hollywood boyfriend when I was 18 in New York, but I did not even have the vocabulary to be like, what about a BDSM community event? Maybe I can find one. I don't even know if, God, the internet was still a very different animal back then too.
So you were just like a middle-aged boyfriend, producer. Okay. That's like the dream being from a small town middle America though.
I mean, looking at it back at, I'm like, wow, what a horrific thing. Like, first of all, why was this 39-year-old man at an 18? That he was okay. The X-Men 2, like the old X-Men 2 from like 2000 whatever, had just come out, and he was celebrating like his New York. He was like the after hours party for his New York DVD release thing that he was in
Yeah,
town for was to go to an 18 up club.
that's so sketchy. I
Sir.
mean, we could go back and forth all day about people who were over a decade older than us, who were producers who were taking advantage of that situation. But um yeah, so you were in New York, you were doing BDSM and wait, you weren't doing
It
BDSM
was not
yet. You
doing
were just like
BDSM yet.
in dating an older man. Did you like
But
stay at his house at least? Like what is it
I
like?
got to stay in some really nice hotels, but he lived in LA. He was
Okay.
only coming, like I only saw him when he was in New York on business. Although
Hmm.
one last story is that one time he came out on a trip because some friends of his had arranged for a blind date with him and oh, what's the Vanderbilt CNN guy?
Anderson Cooper.
Anderson Cooper, and he blew off Anderson Cooper to hang out with me instead.
I have a good Anderson Cooper story. So
Oh, yeah, I want to hear it.
my ex sold him a cock ring because they worked at the Pleasure Chest, and like everyone at the store was like, "Yeah, that's his favorite kind of cock ring." It was like stainless steel. It's like, of course it is, of course it is. That same store also had Raven Simone was in there, and she left a coffee cup, so they just like kept the coffee cup. They're like, "This is
That's,
Raven
no,
Simone's."
you keep that on the counter. You put a little display. But anyway, I eventually got away. I the long term boyfriend didn't work
Hmm.
out. It was a short-lived affair. I eventually decided I had to come back to Texas. There was like family stuff, but it was a very short. I eventually made my way to Washington State, and that's where I
Okay.
first got into BDSM. I had a relationship with a local pro dom who of like kind of the first person that taught me like the term sex workers' rights.
Mm.
Um, was like the first time I learned a lot, like so much of my basic BDM education. And then that person uh, was best friends with Penny Barber's mentor, who then
Okay.
became my mentor. And so that's how I got into porn, sort of like a lot of people through the via the BDSM community. I had a girlfriend in Seattle who had a friend in San Francisco, and when I moved to San Francisco, the introductions were made, and Penny Barber, great Hall of Fame. Well, Hall of Fame in my heart. Eventually, will be a Hall of
I
Fame
feel like
performer.
they deserve to be. I feel like eventually, like a lot of the Bay Area shit's gonna eventually be represented in the Hall of Fame. I don't know when that's gonna be. It might be in like 20 years though.
Well, do you know how in like sports Hall of Fames they do like classes or not class, but like a whole team will go into the Hall of Fame?
Yeah,
I feel like all the people that like did that queer porn kink moment in the
yeah.
2012-ish range, that should be a class of
It
its
was
own for the
so
Hall of
crazy
Fame.
because I moved in 2013 and it was just like walking into it at the peak of it where I'm like, everything's already established. I felt like it was just like walking into like a finished team already or something.
But then it also like dissolved so quickly after. Like it did not
Yeah.
last that much longer after 2013.
Yeah, I feel like everyone who was doing more stuff though wasn't doing it here, where it was like the opportunities were other places. Where I feel like my first year I was shooting a ton here, and then it was like, okay, you're in New England shooting, you're in Europe, you're doing all this other stuff. It's just like so crazy how so much of that changed. So, what year did you actually move to SF?
So I lived in San Francisco for a long time before I think, well, not that long. There's like the first time I ever did a scene, which was only a few years after being here, but it was literally $50. I was there for a couple hours. It was like Penny didn't know me, so she didn't trust me. So she was like, okay, I'm just gonna have you be tied up this whole time so that if you are weird, she told me that to my face too. She was like, you're just gonna be tied up this whole time. I don't know you. If you're weird, we're like, I don't have to worry about you trying anything because you're gonna be tied up the whole time.
I'm like, as a sub, I'm like, that's terrific. I'm
Yeah,
like,
no,
okay,
like I was
sure.
nervous as hell. I was like, please, I don't want to have to do anything. I don't know what's going on. Um, and so that was 2009.
Okay.
Penny and I barely kept in touch. And then, like 4 or 5 years later, like around that same time, 2013 is when my site launched. So it was around the same time.
Were
I
you still
started,
living in SF or were you in Oakland?
I was still
Like,
living in San Francisco at that time. I was
okay.
living in the Tenderloin on Market Street. I had this big studio. A lot of the first Girl Bullies clips were shot there. The place we shot, I never shot there again. That was a one-off. I
Yeah, it
was
was just some random place in West Oakland. Also, I had strep throat the entire week before. So like that whole week, I'm like, I think I can do this. Also, every time anyone comes into my cam room, they're like, "Have you ever topped a guy in a BDSM scene?" And you're the only one I can say yes about.
And it was like even in that scene, if you recall, it's all a dream. I don't know if you
Yeah,
remember that part. It's like all a dream.
yeah. So
But
I guess I've never topped anyone other than in one dream sequence of a scene.
it was like a co-top too. There's another person there. But
Yeah,
still, you've got it's still checked off. It's still
yeah,
checked off.
kinda. Um, so you started shooting Girl Bullies in SF. What kind of like sparked your interest where you're like, I need to create a BDSM site? Because especially back then, I felt like it was very hard to like have your own website. It wasn't as easy as it is probably now.
Well, I was very lucky, and I said my mentor was Penny Barber, who had
Hmm.
come into the industry straight up as like I'm starting my own clip store, which is a lot harder than an OnlyFans. It's not as hard as an independent website where you
Hmm.
have to have, this a credit card processor all on your own, web hosting all on your own. But the barrier to entry was still harder back then. And she was, as far as I know, one of the only people in that big Bay Area scene that was just consistently putting out their own content on a platform like that,
Hmm.
not just waiting for shoots or doing like camming. I think was way more if you were going to be independent at that time. It was
Yeah.
much more the camming was the way. Um, but so because Penny had had that mindset from the very beginning of her career, her clips for sale store. Ah, it's unfortunate. Her original Clips for Sale store, where you could, up until very recently, watch my scene, the first scene I ever shot from 2009.
Oh.
She didn't update it in so long that it's taken down. But her relationship with Clips for Sale is almost as old as the site itself. So I had that mentality from the beginning of like I have to own my own content, be producing my own stuff, putting it out every week. That's what I have to do. I wasn't originally intending to start like a more general femdom site, which is what Girl Bullies turned into.
Hmm.
Around that time, there was this explosion in the mixed wrestling fetish, which is
Yes,
just
yeah.
girls versus guys in a semi-competitive or at least competitive feeling sexualized wrestling matches. And
Hmm.
there was so many producers making them that at some point somebody over at HBO Real Sex was like decided that they were going to do a segment on the mixed wrestling fetish.
Hmm.
So I was asked by Rain DeGray, who was a Bay Area BDSM educator and performer, elder who, I have to give respect for helping me in this way. She asked me after seeing me at a couple of these wrestling things, which Penny also got me into.
Hmm.
She had done that. She said, they always need guys was kind of your build. I started doing it a little bit. There were two or three guys hiring me in the Bay Area at that time. I think they're all long gone.
I mean, I
Um,
feel like everything in the Bay, like the last person that's had my podcast is like just starting up in the Bay, and it's just like it's so drastically different where, everyone left. I feel like at least the pandemic, I think, wiped nearly everyone out.
yeah, I mean, so many businesses in the Bay Area of all kinds.
Yeah, it's a big change, but so you did real sex for.
So yeah, she's this educator, Rain DeGray said,
Hmm.
Real Sex has asked me if I could bring some guys down to this thing in LA. It was so cool because it was like a real WWE style wrestling mat, and they like had. It was also maybe one of the first times I saw like like real LA hipsters look like because that's who they brought in for the extras. They were like, I
Yeah.
don't know, bring in your friends. So it was like these producers' cool friends who were like way too cool to ever actually go to like something this dorky. But once I was like, okay, I'm going to be on HBO at this big, super well produced like shoot,
Yeah.
way beyond anything I'm still bigger than any porn shoot I've ever been on. Um, I need to have my own content because I only got paid $300 for like this whole thing. I'm about to be on TV. So I decided to start a wrestling site. Girl Bullies was at first going to be just a wrestling site because
Interesting.
I thought I'll just make a bit of cash when I get famous from HBO. Just that at least I'll have something.
Hmm.
I have no understanding of business. It's like how are people going to go from the HBO to knowing that you have a website? Were they going to think you're going to start Googling you? I didn't know what I was doing.
But it makes
But
sense that you want a place for people to go.
I wanted there to at least be a chance to make some more money off of it. It was
Hmm.
very nebulous, very sort of idealistic. However, the site, once I got it up, the HBO thing never really came out. It was like ended up being like a digital only release that I only found out years later. It's like, oh yeah, it's been up for years. I don't know if you can still find it, but it was up for a little while. But the site, the clip store immediately took off. It immediately started working. I think I also kind of put my own imprint on it. I didn't really have it be a very athletic based. It was more storyline. It's like, oh, you're my roommate, and I want to decide where we watch TV. Let's wrestle about it. And eventually, like the true Girl Bullies, which is a femdom narrative based site, that kind of came out, and wrestling was slowly weaned off. Wrestling is harder to produce. It's you risk people's health. You need a lot more
Yeah.
space. I like to sometimes be able to just throw a tripod on and have us do our little skit. And you really have to have a camera person for shooting the wrestling stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I used to work at the armory and like I would just see girls who got like real injuries from it. Like I saw someone separate their shoulder and I'm just like, what the fuck? This is for a $900 porn shoot or like
Yeah.
1200 if you win. It's just like
And
that's
there's no
not worth
insurance for
it.
the place. Like also it's a huge liability for them. Why you
Yeah.
have I mean the castle wasn't really running on any cylinders. Let's not get into
I
that. Health and safety.
yeah, I really feel like it's the worst of the BDSM world mixed with the worst of the Silicon Valley world, like all in one building. Just like holy shit.
No,
It
perfectly
made me a
put.
lot better porn performer, but I also had my first anxiety attack ever there, so it's a trade-off.
It's like a great place for an anxiety attack. It's just like big, cavernous. Like you could definitely feel like you're lost in the universe. That'd be great. I love it.
Yeah, yeah. It has feelings. But so you were it started as a wrestling site, then you just kind of slowly just got into general BDSM. I feel like for people who haven't seen your site, your Taylor Swift trailer is like the best definition of your site. It's like one of the favorite things I have that I can show people in my work, be like, oh yeah, it's set to this Taylor Swift song. Amazing.
I do love it. I sometimes still think about updating that because it's a basically a music video for Taylor Swift's Blank Spaces, just full of my content. But it's like all 10-year-old content at this point. It's like I want to just, have gotten a little bit better at lighting and camera work since that I kind of want to update it someday.
You should do it like the Eras tour. You can do all the different eras of both the company
Yes.
and
Yes.
Taylor. Like,
Oh, God, I
I'm
love that.
sure Susie would be very into helping you with
Well,
song selection for that.
no, there's a couple of we've definitely thought about redoing it a couple. Well, there's like that. What's that song, "The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived"? I feel
Yeah,
like that song is giving a little bit, like she's implying it. She's
yeah.
implying it. I'm sorry. Maybe
I
that's just
mean,
my brain.
yeah. She has like some dom tendencies for sure. I mean, if you're like 5'10" or 6 foot as a cis woman, it's transcoded, it's
It's gonna be
dom-coded.
it's gonna be put on you. You gotta deal with it. Oh, sorry, I'm
Oh, you're
investing.
totally fine. So was it just kind of like natural that your sexuality kind of like carried over into what you were shooting, or did it just kind of seem like one opportunity led to another? Like, do you think that at least what I get from your content is it's like very tied to your actual sexuality? Is that true?
I mean, there's definitely been like a very strong connection. I will, get into things that don't really sell, and so obviously that's not really part of it. But there'll be things that I turn out that sell really well that I really don't like. I think the boys all know this. Like, I fucking hate wedgies. I hate the word wedgie. I don't like getting wedgies, but it's an incredibly popular sub
It's a really big
niche.
thing.
And girl bullies, like, if your website is called Girl Bullies, you have to do what, like, I feel like that's just something that people would expect to see.
Yeah.
Um, but so there has always been like it is a personal site in a lot of ways. Some of that is just that I really want stories to always make sense, and I would just like big part of it for me is like no, every one of these little skits, these sketches have like reasonable motivation, continuity. That's a big thing for me. It's like the narrative, the human emotion part where it's like this isn't the thing that makes it sexy is the dynamics with the person. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like whether it's a stranger that's seeing your underwear or your roommate finds out that you've got this like whatever sexually embarrassing secret. It's so much of what Girl Bullies is about is very abstract. It's not the physical actions that are taking place. It's
Yeah.
it's the mood and what I used to call outfits and talking. It's some of that setting stuff. And that's very true for my sexuality. Like for
Hmm.
me, it's so much about context and roles and relationships and on storylines, and so much less on like the activities that are happening.
I can definitely see that, especially being like just when you're telling me that you got into a lot of sexuality from going to a theater production about anal. Like it feels like a very through line of like, of course you want the setting, you want the wardrobe, you want kind of like the dressing around just the fetish.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
think.
so, no,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
on.
I was saying that's just, yeah, that's exactly what Girl Bullies like. That's the whole appeal of it, I feel.
Yeah, I feel like being a BDSM sub in porn, I feel like it's has to be a reflection of your sexuality in a certain way because I feel like you have to reflect that on camera when you're in, you know, uncomfortable situations or distressing situations. And I feel like there's no way to really act through that if it's something you're genuinely not interested in.
No, true. And when I've shot for other sites, which I do not as much anymore, but I've shot for Kink and
Hmm.
done some of the mixed wrestling stuff. And even when I shoot for those sites, and it might be a little bit more of a traditional like dungeon setup
Hmm.
with not necessarily like characters or a storyline, it's still I still like tap into the like a part of me where I'm playing a role, even if the role isn't that like explicit in the what's being framed by the producers. um I still go into it trying to like, how do I want to put it, not, I feel it's like having a persona um isn't right, but I I do like basically do a role play even when it's um not that kind of scene. But that's
Hmm.
because, and that's me putting myself, even though I know it sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but like playing a role is me being authentic. I don't know if that how to make that
Yeah,
make
I
sense.
mean, I feel like we're in like the acting conversation of creative outlet in a BDSM form right now because like to people outside of this, it probably sounds so pretentious and be like, well, it's really this role or this when you're just like, oh, you're just getting your ass beat on camera. But it is like this whole different thing. And like for me, I think what I love specifically about like lesbian BDSM so much is there's a breaking of like the wall between the audience and the people in it because you can have this elaborate role play, but once you're getting flogged by a girl who's behind you and you're both getting content out of it or both getting paid, that's really real, you know? There's a point where it's like all performance and then there's a realness to it. And that's like what I love about it so much is it's this real performance that you're seeing something actually real that happens in some point of the scene.
I mean, it sounds so much almost like cliche to like compare BDSM to like sports,
Okay, I'm glad you're doing it. I was gonna do it, but that's great. Yeah.
but it's like when you're doing when you're performing, you like
Mm-hmm.
there is both. It's both. Like you are both taking yourself to the maximum of your physical
Mm-hmm.
abilities in a way that you can't really be performative, but you still know that you're in front of an audience. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In the same way, you still know there's a camera, even though maybe you're having this BDSM exchange with someone that
Mm-hmm.
is taking you past a place where you can be pretending, but you're still performing.
For sure. Yeah, that's really changed my kind of outlook on porn performance. I got really into sports psychology a few years ago, and that has like really helped me a lot because I'm like, if you're going into these things with these expectations, then you can be in the right headspace during it. And like, especially when you're doing something intense, like I did a public disgrace scene with Princess Donna. We did it completely on our own like 2 years ago. And like after that, I felt like I was like in a 5 round fight, just like completely covered in bruises. But my expectation going into that is like, this is gonna happen. This is gonna be a few days of this, of recovering. So I could really like fully be present in the moment where I feel like if you just view it as, oh, it's a performance, you really can't fully like be there in the scene and like, experience it and give the best performance you can.
I mean, maybe this is just me being like um exhibitionist slut, but I feel like I can push myself a lot further when I know it's being filmed.
Same, like I had more of a BDSM life like outside of work for a while. I was like in BDSM relationships probably since I think the first dom I had was when I was still in high school. I was like 18. I had this like online dom, but like whenever I did anything in a BDSM context that wasn't on camera, I was always like Felt like it was almost wasted. Where I'm like, if I'm doing something extreme, I want it on camera. I want to have documentation of all of this, you know? I want it to be my art. Where I feel like I really started channeling that probably in the last like 6 years, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna do all the things that, would be a scary scene on my own, but if I'm terrified of electricity, I want that on camera, you know? I want the art out of it instead of just being like, oh yeah, I had this fun scene that I can just tell people about and that's it.
Wait, are you terrified of electricity?
Very, very, very. That was like a big part of. So I worked as a cam performer at the Armory for like 3 or 4 years, and everyone was always running around with those electric
Yeah, yeah.
things,
TENS units or the little zappers, the
the
actual little
zappers.
zappers, the
So I was
cattle prods.
terrified of them. Sometimes it was a cow. See, this is I'm like this makes it sound like a very kind of explains part of the workplace environment where people just like had those all the time. I was terrified of them. So I finally did a BDSM scene with it and I was like crying in the scene. But it was a super great scene. So yeah, and I'm so glad I got to like have it on camera, not just have it be this thing that exists abstractly in my mind, you know?
I can definitely see that. I feel like when I'm doing something like that is the activity itself is scary for me. I don't think I haven't done that as much I would say publicly, but like performatively on camera. Um because I think I don't want to hesitate on camera. And I am kind of a baby about like I will do things I'm scared of, like needles is a big one for me that I'm afraid
Yeah,
of, but I will do for
that's
the
a
right
hard limit for
person.
me. Yeah, no.
No, fair, fair. Um, but like I would never do that on camera because I don't want to look like as scared as I actually am.
But like that's also the fun of it. Like obviously I couldn't hesitate with electricity because I was like on a St. Andrew's cross and shit.
Yeah.
So it's not like I could be like, no. But like, I don't know. I feel like this might be like a bigger conversation because like maybe the humanities what makes BDSM porn so impactful is you get to see these real moments within this like high intensity thing. And I think the fear is like part of that. So I think that's something I always want to do is like to be able to push myself and, experience all these scary things. Because like I wouldn't want to do a public disgrace scene if it like wasn't on camera. I don't want to
Oh
go
God,
through
no.
all of that just to be like, oh,
Thanks, everybody. Hope everybody has a nice
yeah.
night.
Also, like even just shooting that, it was so because we produced ourselves, so I like had to send out invites to like a party essentially and be like, "Hey, I'm getting gangbanged here. Do you want to go?" You know? And that's like such a hard ask for someone who doesn't even like inviting people to like a dinner party without feeling a little awkward about it. Where it's like, "I'm getting gangbanged. I would love if you would come."
How many extras did you end up having?
Like 50?
Oh my God. Well, I feel like I've seen previews for that. There were 50 people there.
Yeah. The
Dang.
fucking paperwork. The production of that was so much harder than the actual scene. Like,
Dude, you know about the little buddies doing the bottom floor, right?
hmm?
The Susie and Michael, the bottom floor thing.
Oh yeah, it's fucking so cool.
I saw this. Just that was that same thing where we had all of these people trying to do it was, but it was less than 50. It was only 38 people's paperwork, and that was still like too much,
It's
way
too
too
fucking
much.
much. Yeah, I love that everyone is just kind of taken the best concepts from Kink and did it on their own and just produced on their own.
Listen, this might have to be as an aside.
Yeah,
They pitched it to Kink and they turned it down.
of course they did. Well, that's like also another thing. Like Princess Donna was gonna bring Public Disgrace back for Kink, but they're like both doing the same location every time. It's like that kind of defeats the purpose. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely a connection for me between like athleticism and porn. Like, do you feel I don't know, I feel like porn performers are somewhere between athletes and artists where it's like this artistry thing, but it's also you have to be able to do these things that most people in society can't physically do.
I mean, there's just the chemicals that you go through when even if you are standing in one place, which sometimes you're not actually doing anything, you're just taking. Uh, impacts or whatever. But sometimes you are physically having to do like things that are physically strenuous.
Hmm.
Um, I've had people that love to just tell you to get in plank position and then leave you there. Um,
That's
and
hot. Like
yeah,
that's great.
but the feeling of like accomplishment and drain like exhaustion, I
Yeah.
is only comparable to like when you've given your all in some sort of athletic competition. I think about like playing basketball when you like play defense as hard as you can and you're just when it's over, that is so it's like one of the only things that is sort of equivalent to for me to the way you feel when you like fully are done with a scene and it's like time to have a snack.
I'm like, I've never played in the WNBA, but I just got my ass beat by a 6'2" Dom yesterday. I'm like, I feel like it's probably in the same range where I'm like, okay, I think I think I have a little taste of the pain experience.
I wish I knew like the chemical like the actual neurochemistry because like that sort of like pain is over like flood feeling like
Hmm.
I know there's just probably specific words and terms for those for that release, but it's definitely the same.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And I think also when you like start framing performers in porn as athletes, I feel like it really makes you view it differently as well. Where I feel, I mean, this is my hot take. I think you're gonna agree with it because we're on the same wavelength with this. I think porn's actually the biggest sport in the world, but society is too repressed to be able to deal with that.
Dude, I I very it absolutely is the biggest because when
Yeah.
when you see it like I mean I have to give it up. What I do, like I said, it's barely BDSM porn because it's so what's the word I'm looking for? Light impact is like I don't know,
Hmm.
so it was the thing that comes to my mind. And so much of it is like talking, standing, like there's a little bit of roughhousing. I actually sometimes like have been working a lot more in like mainstream and just seeing what it goes into like a 3 or 4 person just normal very
Hmm.
mundane um straight porn scene is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Just the amount just the athleticism that is required from all parties whether it's like from a sort of cardio standpoint or from the just oh, can you keep doing this strenuous activity, but just make your body 10% more awkwardly placed for my cameras?
Hmm.
Um, they are elite athletes. I don't put myself in that same. I used to be a little bit more hardcore. Um, but as you know, if you've ever seen Girl Bullies, like I think the hardest thing that's ever happened to me on Girl Bullies is like maybe a really bad hand spanking. It's it's very conversation based.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is cardio with porn. Like, that's what I work on when I go to the gym. I just like never want to be at the end of a scene and be like winded. It's like my
Yeah.
biggest thing. Um, but it's also just like you just have to think about how much and what parts of your body you're using during a scene and being like, okay, I can't use my shoulder. I need to use my elbow instead of this or all of that. I've really noticed that recently because so I got married last summer and my
Congratulations.
oh thanks. And my partner is a stone top. So my lesbian fingering abilities have gone to shit over the years. I was topping a girl with my hand in a scene recently, and it was just like in the middle. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this
Very
anymore.
specific muscles, like right in the middle, right? Like this is what I always think of, like right here in the middle of the wrist. Uh,
Yeah, it's all like such a thing, and it's things people don't think about because they're just like, oh, it's just fingering someone. It's like in a porn scene, it's a very different intensity. It's a
you gotta
very
get the
different angle.
triceps sometimes involved too.
I try to do mostly the shoulder because your shoulder's, I think, bigger, so it has more of a um it can last longer, I think. But I think it's just such a interesting thing when you really start bringing up porn in the conversation about sports because it is so different. But also I feel like even just the way porn is covered also very much fits into that because I feel like a lot of the time the press isn't really giving athletes a chance to be full complex humans is the same way it is in porn, where I feel it's gotten a lot better. There's a lot more talk about mental health, but especially 10 years ago, it was still very much just like, oh, you should be able to do all this stuff. If you have issues with the industry, why are you complaining? You know, and just not really given agency to be a full person.
I mean, I see a little bit still when you meet with people who's like maybe their expectations or their cultural settings are from a different era. And just talking about like the physical part, it's there is a sort of, and I also think this has a little bit to do with like people that are like Gen X and boomers.
Hmm.
I feel like this is getting a little maybe a far field, but I sometimes think Gen Xers maybe are a little less connected to their body than us millennials.
For
And
sure.
so they're sort of like this, there's this distance. I feel like I'm maybe giving them too much credit. There's this distance of like these people are doing stuff I couldn't do. So obviously they are physically invulnerable. I sometimes feel like they're like, I could never do this, so I can't put myself in their mindset. So I guess their knees are made of metal. So like, you know what I mean? I'm explaining this poorly, but it's like because the porn performer and is so far from what this Gen X producer director can imagine
Hmm.
that they don't even try to imagine what the person's body is going through when what they're asking them to do. They're like, you're a professional sex athlete. Surely your thighs will never become tired. And I'm going to keep moving this day forward under the assumption that you do not feel pain or discomfort. And if you do, it's probably because you're just like a troublemaker,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of
ungrateful.
that.
I
But
feel like that I see it less often, but
it's
there,
gotten a lot better. But like I also feel like the conversation with actual athletes, like professional athletes, it's kind of changed in the same way where there's like actually mental health that's talked about instead of just being like, why do you choke? Why can't you do this at this exact moment? Where I feel like especially like with LeBron before he won a championship, that was like nonstop with him, where it was everyone talking about like, well, he mentally can't do that.
I mean, I feel like my number one sport is the NBA. I love
Yeah,
the
you're a
NBA.
huge NBA fan.
Huge. Like I have obsessed in many ways. The bookshelf behind me is covered in NBA books. It's like all science fiction, fantasy, and NBA only. It's all I have. Little Noam Chomsky still in there for the college days. But I always feel like the NBA is like just the tiniest bit more progressive than a lot of the other big
Hmm.
leagues, definitely more than college football.
For sure.
So they were ahead of the conversation on like sort of mental health and the overall humanization that you have to be like, oh, this person's feelings are real and matter, which I think there is that you have to take that first step to be like, this isn't just an object that needs to perform
Hmm.
for me. And I don't just mean that for the fans, I mean the media too would, like would cover them like objects. This, and I'm not gonna get into the like obviously like America's racial history is a huge part of that. I
Hmm.
do think the same thing comes up though with performers in other parts where they're, the media just sort of treats them as products. And in the sports world, there has been a slight shift. And I feel like a bigger shift in the NBA where I see it, where like to me, it's like, oh yeah, we've been talking about the mental health in the NBA not that long actually, but still feels like it's been with us for a
Hmm.
while.
Yeah, I feel like part of it, I think, is NBA players are more humanized just because you actually see them as people. And I feel like probably soccer might be a little bit the same way, where you're actually seeing people's faces. Where I feel like, especially with like college football, until the NIL thing happened, basically no one had any rights, no one was getting paid shit. And I feel I actually talked to a college football podcast about this because AVN and the national championship are gonna be in Vegas the same week in 2 years.
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah, so I reached out to some of the college football podcasts I listen to. I'm like, hey, if anyone wants to talk about the cross section of it, and it very much fits the same way when mini-vids came around, OnlyFans, where people were so limited to you need to shoot for this studio, you're gonna be locked in there essentially. If you're gonna be successful, it's because they give you the opportunities. Where when mini-vids, OnlyFans, being able to shoot on your iPhone and have it be good quality happened, everything changed. Where if you want to be a porn star now, you can move to Vegas and kind of make it happen if you really want to. So I think it's just like been a really big shift. But also in that conversation, it came up what schools are the most porn coded. We decided University of Miami and Arizona State.
Arizona State is pretty famous for just like being, I guess, a party school, an unhinged
Yeah.
alcoholic school.
Yeah, my dad used to live in Scottsdale, so definitely being around the Valley of the Sun, every stereotype you know about Arizona State's very, very true.
I can imagine. And there's a decent amount of performers from Arizona too.
There's been I think like 4 or 5 who've been on this podcast.
Oh, really? Just on this
Yeah,
podcast? Damn.
yeah, we've honestly have gotten kind of a lot of people. I think your episode number 75, maybe, question
Still,
mark.
4 out of 75
Yeah,
for
it's
like
been
a
a lot.
random ass state. That's kind of a lot. Any other
But
Texan?
oh, for sure, yes.
Oh, hell
At
yeah.
least
I mean, I don't love Texas. Why would I
you're
say
not even
hell
the
yeah?
first Texan of this season.
Oh, wait, who else can I know?
Stephanie Special.
Wait, Stephanie Special is from Texas?
Yeah,
I did know that. I did know
she's
that. I
from the
did know that.
Metroplex area, like
No.
Dallas, Fort Worth, I think. And then we had Ella Darling on it before, and she went to school at UT, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I do
so
know. I did
there
know the both of those actually.
yeah, there is some Texas representation, so you are not the only one. But yeah, what are you kind of looking to do in the future now? Because I mean, we're both old now. We've been in porn for quite a while. What's kind of keeping you driven to like keep creating?
So a lot of my time with Girl Bullies content these days is I make visual novels and video games for a Patreon. I like to keep that as a sort of back pocket in case all of the actual adult sites are, 86th one day.
Mm-hmm.
I am not shooting right now. I'm in a little bit of a holding pattern because the way sort of the model is for Girl Bullies is it takes a while for content to pay for itself. It's
Mm-hmm.
more about keeping. I don't really shoot trade. I come from the era before trade. It's just like, no, if someone's here, if someone's giving you content, you're giving them money. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I still mostly shoot for pay, and like I said, it takes a while for shoot to pay for itself. It's mostly about the catalog, the archives.
Mm-hmm.
Every month, all the although not all, most of the revenue comes from the backlog. And if we are going to be outlawed, I'm gonna save basically, it's just a little dark, but I'm basically saving war chest shoot funds for the day that we are no longer allowed to, like when OnlyFans and clips for sale are just shuttered entirely. I'm just trying to see if that momentum picks back up. I would say right now the momentum to against us is sort of slackening. I don't know if you've seen that, like the general hands-off movement like hands-off is becoming
Yeah.
like a slogan of a sort of anti-Trump
Yeah.
anti-Trump momentum.
For people who are listening in the future, this is like early April. There was pro over 1,000 protests throughout the United States about just like I think general anti-Trump after all those dumb tariffs that were signed. I mean, obviously all the shit's evil that's happening and all that, but it's also very stupid,
Yeah,
which kind of makes me feel more hopeful. Like, I can't remember what the last thing was, but oh, it was trying to start a trade war with Canada and Mexico. And that like lasted 2 days, and he's like, "Oh, never mind, don't worry about
it's
it."
no, but that's exactly my point. Like they have been sort of there's been a bumblingness, a lack of focus. I'm sort of hoping, and so hands off was like our my friend Susie Q.
Hmm.
She, the
Also
the
been on the pod,
yeah,
yeah,
also just a big Chelsea Poe booster in general. At least
yeah. We
in
love
our
Susie on the
hearts.
pod, yeah, 1,000,000%.
Um, Hands Off My Porn was like their 2024 sort of like slogan. They got involved with this nonprofit called Artists United for Change. They
Hmm.
had this whole Hands Off My Porn pro Kamala platform. And it was really cool to see the hands off is becoming like a more spread around thing so that we can kind of creep in with like, and while you're keeping your hands off things, also keep them off porn. That's another thing. You should keep your hands off. Thank you. And like I said, I feel like these guys are not killing it, and their ability to pivot and then come after us while it doesn't feel as threatening as it once did. So maybe they will be having some, I will be getting some shoots lined up. But for now, I make these weird little these little sort of femdom video games for Patreon. That's what I put a lot of my energy into. Um, Susie and I just started our own sort of
I was just gonna bring that up.
podcast. We used to have one. We had a podcast many, many years ago that was like Game of Thrones, like sex workers talk about Game of Thrones.
We when we had dinner at Avian, I literally brought it up. I'm like, yeah, winter's coming on your face.
You remember what it's called? Oh my God, that's
Of
amazing.
course I do. Yeah.
Oh,
1,000,000%.
it's funny. I thought in 2016 that we had like missed the boat and it was too late to get into podcasting. I thought that in 2016, if you could believe it.
Yeah, I never thought I was gonna get into it. I had a really bad BBC interview. Um, and I was like, shit, I just need to come up with a space for sex workers to talk about everything. Like I want the good, the bad, because there's not a uniform good or bad in this industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Now I really appreciate this format that's very just like we can talk about whatever,
Yeah,
including
I
like how much some companies suck.
Yeah, I just hate when I watch it and it's just like, oh, you can't talk about anything bad with sex work. And it's like, well, we're an industry like everything else. There's gonna be positive and negative. That would be like, imagine listening to like a sports podcast and it's like you can't talk bad about the league. And it's
Dude,
just like
well, we've been having a real
sometimes that has to
problem
happen.
in the NBA. We've been having this problem where people only say bad things. Everyone's always just complaining. We have this. They're having this real come to Jesus moment in NBA broadcasting where everyone's like, "Why is everything such a negative take?"
I mean, I now we've covered most porn stuff, and we can talk about this. The Stephen A. Smith thing talking about Bronny and then LeBron like coming up to him. Like, of course, if you're gonna talk shit about someone's kid and call them like a bad father and stuff, of course I was gonna say something to you. Like, what the fuck do you think's gonna happen?
Stephen A. Smith. First of all, we were talking about these buffoons running the country. So have you heard that Stephen A. Smith is like very seriously putting feelers out for a 2028 run?
Yeah,
Like he's
yeah,
not casual about it.
yeah. Do you listen to Katie Nolan's podcast at all?
No, I'm a big Katie Nolan, sort of general supporter of her
Yeah.
whole thing, but I
Y-
don't listen to her podcast.
Yeah, her podcast went into being like they were explaining to one of their friends like what Stephen A. Smith is. It's like, well, he's like outspoken, but he doesn't really know anything. And he'll say like crazy stuff. Like he was also like, yeah, free Medicare for like the entire country, but then was like hanging out with Trump like the week after. It's just like, what the fuck is this?
No, I mean, he is a lot like Trump. He would be like a sort of Trump antidote. I can imagine, or at least I can see yourself talking yourself into that. Someone being like, no, this guy is loudly confident with no actual knowledge. Isn't that what we fight fire with fire?
I just
Um,
like I don't know who actually watches those ESPN and like Fox Sports shows that are just like Stephen A. Smith, Colin Cowherd, who's the other?
Pat McAfee,
Yeah, like that
he's
shit.
another category on
Skip
it.
Bayless is another example. It's like who is like watching that though? Because like I'm into quite a few sports. College football is my number one. WNBA. I really like MMA as well. And it's just like, who's listening to these people who don't know anything about any of these sports really and just say the craziest shit?
And they cover every sport. Like
I,
they have a comment about every sport, even though you know what I mean? There's like no time to research or know, but they're like, can you believe this figure skater? The college baseball playoffs. Like, brother, you don't know any of this stuff. Why are you so
Yeah,
mad?
yeah. I always love like the college football takes because they're just so surface level. And there's like Deion Sanders, that's everything. And then they'll bring like Ohio State, Alabama, and that's it. It's just like that's the whole realm for you.
Well, at least that's not, the college football coverage. That's other people who have to comment sometimes. The actual NBA halftime show, half the time, has people with that same. I mean, at least I've seen that's what you mean. You mean like outsiders that are having like national reporters, like the actual college football people on like the pregame shows. They're good, right?
So
Oh,
I'm into
mhm.
like the weird part of college football. So do you know like Shutdown Fullcast?
No.
It's the most unhinged college football shit, very tangentially related to college football. Like they do like all these great charity things for like refugees and like trans youth and all this stuff. It covers college football, but it also covers everything else in the world. Um, there's the Sickos committee that they watch every single college football game, like even the trash ones, which I do too. Like if there's a game on a Tuesday night between like Akron and like Indiana State, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm watching it. It's gonna be awful, completely pointless. Like that's what I love about college football. I do enjoy like the national championship, all like the traditional big things, but the crazy fucked up shit's like my favorite. Like that every team has all these weird traditions that only exist because they've existed for 150 years. That's my shit. Like I want the dumb shit.
See, and college football has like the crazy traditions, but you also would have been like a college football fan through like the weird ass blogger 2000 teens days. Like I can't imagine the kind of content that was being put out. Like, because the blogging world, the social media college world, or social media sports world has like, I wouldn't say like tamed down, but it's not the like when people were just kind of figuring out how to like just starting to be really weird about sports on the internet, it was just such a different time. And I imagine in college football, where you have such a wider spectrum of like schools and like odd little intricacies, I can't imagine like some of the unhinged
I mean,
freaking
still though. I
still,
mean,
still today.
the message board still exists for like especially most of these southern teams. Like, do you know like Clemson, like
Yeah,
Dabo
I'm
Sweeney?
familiar with
Okay.
the
So there's a certain amount of people in the Clemson fan base who believe that Dabo Sweeney was literally sent by God to bring Clemson back, like to like a true biblical thing. And he's refused to go through the transfer portal. And there's like a segment of Clemson fans who are like, this is a test from God for us to trust our loyalty and stuff. It's like you're putting this into like a 9-3 college football season who's getting like blown out by Texas in the first round. And it's just like that level of intensity, or like, I mean, the Michigan Ohio State shit the last 4 years have gotten beyond any level of toxicity. Like, uh, that, like, at the end of the game this year, like, players on both sides got maced by police and shit.
I do
Like,
remember.
that's starting to hit like the European soccer violence level where I went to a match between Rotterdam and Amsterdam earlier like I think it was last month, and that's a rivalry where they don't allow away fans because of violence. And it's just like such a different perspective with
But like
American sports.
imagine if like fans of Liverpool like had Liverpool University, like they were like, no, like this is where I spent 4 years at this club. It's not just like I've been watching this team my whole life. Like I literally lived in like a segregated little social area that was dedicated to this entity for 4 years. You know what I mean? Like
I mean,
even I know that
but
the soccer hooligans are like on another level, but I'm just saying, as far as like creating a fervor, creating mania, like imagine if you just like, what if you lived on Liverpool campus or whatever your
yeah.
European equivalent is for like 4 years of your developing life?
I mean, I have lived next to Chase Center for 4 years, and I do not feel that I'm not willing to fight anyone over Steph Curry. Maybe Draymond, though. If someone really disrespects Draymond,
Wait, you
um,
lived out, you live over by where the Chase Center is?
yeah, yeah, like 3 blocks.
Oh
So,
no.
yeah, it's
So like, how do you get out of your house when it's a game day?
just go the other way.
Just go the other
Like,
way.
yeah, yeah, it's not bad. It's been really cool. Like, I got to go to the finals a few years ago. And that was really great. We went
The
through like the little
2022
playoff
year?
run. Yeah, yeah, that was
Oh,
great. We saw, I think, game two. And then I've been manifesting the Golden State Valkyries existing for 3 years. Every time I'd walk by that building, I'd be like, we need a WNBA team. Then on my sports podcast, we not only guessed that we're gonna get a WNBA team, we also guessed the name a year before it happened.
wait, how did you, what can, which, where'd the name come from? How did you know the name?
We're like we're like okay, it's gonna be something related to Warrior, but it's not gonna be
Oh,
as direct because WNBA teams are not direct. Like with naming, where it's like a little bit more of a concept where it's like the Washington Mystics, it's the Fever, it's the Sky.
well,
So
wait,
we
how is
just
the Fever connected to this? There's because half the WNBA teams connect and like half of them don't. Like Fever and Pacers, they don't go together, right?
they don't, but I knew I knew if it was gonna happen, it was gonna be from the ownership here.
Yeah.
Where I knew there was going to be a thing. I wanted it to be San Francisco, honestly. I didn't want it to be all of Golden State. That's just kind of my personal take. I'm like, if I pay enough to live in the city, I feel like I deserve to have a team that's just San Francisco.
You can go watch the Giants. Or
Yeah.
you can go down to Santa Clara and watch the San Francisco Clara Niners.
Yeah, I can't get into that. I
I'm
feel
just
very
kidding.
bad. I've rooted against the Niners in the last few Super Bowls because I wanted Taylor. Taylor Swift brought me more enjoyment than the city of Santa Clara,
Oh yeah, no, that's very fair.
honestly.
I forgot that it was Kansas City both, but the first time she wasn't involved in
Oh,
the first
okay.
Super
Yeah,
Bowl.
I did want the Niners to win that year. But yeah, I feel like I really manifested the Valkyries into existing. Um, and that we got the name right. It's fucking crazy. But that's what I'm like really excited about. I think that's probably like the biggest perk. Also, the concerts at Oracle Park, they obviously don't have a roof or anything, so you can hear anything. So any concert you don't actually want to pay for.
Let's get a little.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, Kendrick Lamar is coming. Oh, My Chemical Romance is coming. Cool. I don't want to pay money for that, but if it's free,
Sorry.
you're totally good. But yeah, I just have a few more questions left for you. Thank you first so much for coming on, and I'm so glad we got to talk about BDSM, sports, the Bay Area queer porn scene back in the day. I really like your suggestion that the whole scene gets into
Yeah, a special inauguration or whatever it's
yeah.
called. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. You should like pitch that to AVN and be like, what about eras instead?
Yeah. I've actually been toying with, so I have a friend who's a camera guy up here,
Hmm.
that works for a bunch of the companies. He has started as his little side gig, passion project, started Hall of Fames for individual states, but for BMX. Like that, he was an 80s
Oh,
like
cool.
BMX pro, like that was his life. And I've been thinking like there needs to be BDSM kink Hall of Fames. Like just thinking about people
Shit.
from the past that have like to barely exist in memory or old zines, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's a very distant nebulous idea, but maybe we don't have to
Nice.
wait for AVN.
Yeah, I support that 100%. Like, I think that'd be so cool because there's so much BDSM made that's just really not recognized because even within like AVN and well, Explicit doesn't even have a BDSM or fetish category
Yeah.
anymore,
They have
which
like
is
they have like niche. They have a niche website, which is so random.
yeah,
Could mean
it's
anything.
so weird. That's why I don't do expos anymore. I'm like, you eliminated my category. I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Oh wait, XBiz or did or AVN?
Expos
AVN.
did.
XBiz. Yeah,
AVN,
they're the one that
X,
just has
yeah.
niche.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
like, kind of. I'm like, I can't get stoked about that. I can't be like, I have the best niche nomination. I'm like, if it's fetish or BDSM, I'm like, fuck yeah. So let's say you wake up tomorrow and one thing could magically change in porn. What would you have it be?
Hmm. I mean, I there's so many things that like the world needs. And my first selfish desire was like, what if we just had a credit card processor that we did? What if we could just get paid without Visa being involved?
You do not
Um,
know how much that speaks to me right now. I've been
yeah.
dealing with credit card processor shit for the last like 2 fucking months.
Dude,
Yeah.
it brings me so much anxiety, so much frustration, just the way they're so it's so arbitrary, and it is a lot of religious based stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're like the guy that ran MasterCard admitted straight up that like no, like goes against my beliefs, and that's why I had to do something. Um, I like to like I am a writer for fun. Like I like to write fiction. I realized somewhat recently that I was self-censoring the word forced in my personal fiction writing. Like I was trying to find ways to not say the word forced in a nor in like a sent in like a paragraph that no one on earth will ever read. And like so that frustration with and honestly I feel it's like there's so many other problems that are there's so many instances of censorship in the world
Mm-hmm.
that are so much more dehumanizing, so much more pressing, but it's the first thing that comes to mind, whether that's eliminating MasterCard or whatever it is, but us being able to make the consensual interesting content that people want to see that is in no way contributing to the real harms that the lack of sex education has. That I mean, I'm actually one of those people that kind of does believe we should have a conversation about like violence in video games and movies, a conversation. And if you want to have a conversation about the kinds of porn that have proliferated since the barrier has been lowered, I'm down to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What I find totally unacceptable is that Netflix can make content that we can't.
Very true. Yeah, it's very strange what's acceptable in what places now. Um, yeah, also I feel like so much of the stuff in the States is just so anti-sex work and anti-sexuality as a whole, where when I go to the Netherlands, there's not really a second thought about any of this. It's like, yeah, it's sex work, of course. What's wrong with that? You know? Where here, I feel like there's still so much stigmatization about it, even though I feel like it's proliferated so much that's like everyone knows someone who's cammed now. Everyone knows someone who had an OnlyFans, where it's not this like thing where I feel like even before the pandemic, it was still like so more taboo and just kind of unheard of.
No, it's who was that singer who was recently talking about how she makes more money selling she does like an OnlyFans. She's like a famous singer from the night not the 90s, like early 2000s. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
So there was someone who had a hit, like a hit that you've heard, the artist name that you've heard recently was like just had a social media honest moment of being like, yeah, Spotify has ruined music. I do OnlyFans to support myself, and I love it. And I make a lot of money. Like would make more money than I could possibly make off of my hit song. So yeah, since the pandemic, the mainstream has definitely not, I almost said embraced, has allowed us to somewhat sneak in.
I mean, it's crazy though. Like, if you just look at the last like 4 years of sex work, like you had a song with Beyonce talking about starting an OnlyFans that won a Grammy. You just had sex workers on stage at the Oscars for Best Picture. Like, it's really changed in a lot of ways where I feel like it's not as limiting as it was before, but there's still these like overarching societal issues of like censorship from like these credit card companies and all this other form of like financial discrimination. Like, I don't know about you, but I've been banned off PayPal since I've been 19 years old for doing a cam session. So it's just like this really crazy thing where I'm like banned from all these apps, even though I'm doing legal sex work, paying taxes. And it's just like this weird double standard in this country.
I got my Amazon Prime taken off for accepting gift cards, as
Oh,
payment. And I had so many movies and books just like wiped away that I had bought years and years worth. Anyway, that's my weirdly still have a PayPal. even though
Wow, congrats.
I did misuse it early on, and I learned quickly that you can never use it for anything related to work, no matter what. Um, but no, and I know people have had bank accounts shut down, just completely shut
Yeah,
down.
it's legitimately terrifying here that it's just all these things can keep happening. And yeah, I think that's kind of the downer as much as positive stuff happens here. I feel like it's really going to take for decrim to happen here whenever that's going to eventually happen. I have hope eventually it will happen just because I don't know. I think once it becomes so destigmatized, I think people will just be like, oh, it's whatever, you know?
And I had this dark, it's like, and not decrim through the sort of back door of like the complete breakdown of social order so that there are no laws. That's a
I
different
mean,
kind of decrim.
I'm like, we're already pretty close to that, so maybe that's going to be the way it goes.
It's like the monkey, what's that monkey paw finger uncurls or whatever. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
there'll
yeah.
be decrim. There'll be no more laws against sex work.
I mean, I guess maybe no laws. I mean, that's fine, I guess. Like, whatever gets the United States through this next period of time, I don't know what it's going to be. We're obviously in a crazy time, but I think it's also important that there are sex workers making stuff and creating representation for this time because I think if anything, there's going to be a really need for like escape and for people to look more inward on their own sexuality and figure this stuff out.
We've been talking more and more about like live events because it's like people want to connect when it's
Hmm.
bad times.
For sure. Well, where can everyone find you on like social media, websites, clip
So
stores?
the website, I've been talking a lot about clips for sale, but I do have my own independent website where I wrangle with the credit card processors all on my own. Girlbullies.com, very simple, very easy. If you are into like femdom, male humiliation, I actually have a decent amount of like gay fans who just say that no gay sites do like male humiliation quite like Girl Bullies, and they just kind of like
Oh
only look at
yeah.
me, which I love. I always promise those guys I'm gonna do some gay content. I just need to like, get a good top who can do like the fetish dialogue for me. So girlbullies.com, and then on Instagram I am Sam Solo Proper. I think I'm also Sam Solo on Blue Sky. I'm barely on Blue Sky. Instagram, Sam Solo Proper is if you want
Mhm.
to sort of find me on the internet, that's probably the best place, or girlbullies.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sam. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening to our conversation and dives into all sorts of like BDSM topics that we brought up.
Please. And also, look into deeper. I guess no, they already. Any listeners to this show have probably had plenty of opportunities and invitations to look deeper into the Michigan Ohio State rivalry because it
I
is like
mean,
so fascinating to me.
it's a real core part of my identity. Honestly, whenever I meet anyone from Ohio, it's always like, oh, okay. Or I get my partner is way better about this than me, but if we get a rental car and it's an Ohio State, it's a Ohio plate, they always are like no, which makes me really, really proud. So I'm like, we can't drive around with that. That's sending the wrong idea.
Oh my God, I love that.
Well, thank you everyone for listening, and thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Cheers.